A bunch of new items have recently been revealed to us, and while they don't necessarily follow a core theme, I think it's really telling as to how easy or how the Bazaar team have made the middle of the game easier to play with a bunch of these very flexible, very pivotal items. But you need to see them for yourself. So, Alien Burrito is the first of our new items. This is a medium-sized meal that every 5 seconds deals 9 joy. At a cost of 3, this is relatively low cost, and it's quick firing. 5 seconds is a really, really short cooldown, especially for a full-on meal. We've seen a lot of smaller ingredients, but this will be especially good for items that are looking to trigger off of a meal being used, because Alien Burrito is triggering fairly quickly for that type of thing. 9 joy every 5 seconds, that's not a crazy amount. It's not bad either. This is actually a pretty nicely balanced item, and I do love these items, right? This is a medium item that just deals joy damage in Jules' case. So it's a good benchmarker for us. If we look at other items and they deal less than, this is close to dealing 2 joy per second, right? So if we look at other items and they're doing less than 2 joy per second, and they are medium, then that is slightly below the curve. If they're doing more, that's above the curve. If they're doing different amounts, but they're small or large items, there's some other factors to consider. But it's really nice to have these benchmarks. So Alien Burrito, really good benchmark. Basically 2 joy a second, just a little shy of it. Otherwise, just looking at the art, that is very much an Alien Burrito, right? I don't recognize anything in there. I mean, I am colorblind as all hell, but the wraps are like a really strange color, and most of the things in there look like living organisms to me. They look like snails and stuff. I'll pass on that burrito, thanks. Our next new item is the durian, and this is quite a few things, a medium weapon meal ingredient, you heard all of those correctly, that every 11 seconds deals 15 damage and 15 joy for just the measly price of 5 gold pieces. So we were just saying that a 5 second cooldown, 9 joy item, which is just shy of 2 per second, was a good benchmark for Jules. This costs just 2 gold more, and it's 30 total damage, kind of, for 11 seconds. That is quite a bit more effective. It is mixed damage, which isn't exactly what you want. Sometimes. Don't get me wrong, there will be Jules builds out there that utilize damage. There is a knife build currently that definitely buffs damage and utilizes damaging other damaging items very effectively. But this one in particular, because it's half and half, literally half and half, it's just as good at joy as it is damage. It will fit into many builds, and I think that's maybe the secret to this item, right? It's not going to be the center of a build. It's not, oh, this item can deal incredible amounts of damage or do incredibly amounts of joy if we get the right items around it. The durian is that item that, like, okay, well, I have a joy build, and I do need something like another core component that will do damage, that will actually start swinging, that is a good cost-effective item that I can pivot around if I need to, and that is durian. Not only does it do damage and joy, so you can jump into different bits of the different sides of the build, but it's also a weapon, a meal, and an ingredient. So you can use it for any of those different purposes. If you have items that are calling on meals or ingredients, you can use durian in that position. If you're building around weapons, durian can slot in there. So it's a very, very good item to put into anything. Or it's a very, very good item because it can fit into anything. I think that's going to be its sort of space. It's flexible as an item. Again, looking at the art, it kind of looks like a durian. I'm not massively familiar with the exotic fruit. Is it a fruit? I don't even know if it's a fruit. I assume it is. Our final Jules item of this little haul of new items is the foraged mushrooms, a medium ingredient meal that every 7 seconds heals you for 35 health. And whenever you use a medium item, you gain or deal 5 joy, I guess. Or apply 5 joy is how I really think it should be said. Forage mushrooms, where does this sit into our build? Well, the two items we've just gone over, one of which you remember triggered very quickly every 5 seconds, that was a medium item. That's going to trigger this. So every 5 seconds, it's not only going to deal 9 joy, but if it was in a build of forage mushrooms, it would deal an extra 5 joy because of this passive. As an ingredient and a meal, it's going to slot into lots of builds, which is really, really nice. 35 health for 7 seconds seems pretty much well, no, that seems above par, right? 35 health for 7 seconds? That's a considerable amount of health per second. But maybe this is... because healing has to be balanced on what other people are doing, not what you are doing. So if the baseline level of joy is about 2 joy per second, you have to imagine the baseline level of of damage is going to be slightly above that. Because it doesn't have that mechanic of slipping through maximum health and healing, although it does now have to damage shields. Because joy is more effective against certain things, the baseline for damage in most class, in like a vanilla class, like Vanessa for example, should be a bit higher than 2 per second. Which means if you're healing has to be based, or the balance for healing has to be based on the damage of all characters, not just of yours. So I could see the healing per second being knocked up because of how potent damage is up from other classes. Or it could just be a very strong item. Who knows? They are still balancing a lot of things. It costs 10 gold, so this is much later in the game than some of the other items we saw. Previously, the scaling of items throughout the game wasn't too drastic, right? You'd have a 3 gold set of throwing knives that were just as good, if not better, than the higher priced revolver, because they did the same thing, but you get the throwing knives earlier. That was an old case, but you get the picture, right? Now it looks like they're starting to balance a little bit more based on the price of an item. And we saw this before, like we've seen this a couple of times since, with some really big items. But it's nice to see it at some of the sort of more middle tier items, right? We've seen a 3 gold, a 5 gold, and a 10 gold, and they have increased in value or increased in their capability slightly each time. The 3 to 5 was less of a jump, in my opinion, because it was a more versatile item rather than a specifically strong at a certain thing item. But forage mushrooms 100% has just more value on it than the other 2 items we've seen so far. As it should do, it costs 10 gold base. That means it's going to cost you more gold to buy. It's also going to be appearing in the game later. One thing I do appreciate as well about this is in previous builds, we saw the issue where you would get to your full build at around day 5 or 6, and then you'd just be looking for maybe that one other thing, fill in the slot, because you were already full build. Nothing could really get better from there. Since then, we've had shinies and fancies added to the game. We've seen them very briefly, but that then sort of feels like the TFT or Hearthstone Battlegrounds or Dota Underlords or Dota Auto Chess case of you're looking for that final upgrade. You're chasing that final upgrade, right? That in itself is not the most fun late game mechanic. In fact, it can be quite infuriating. Trust me, I know. But this is a good sign for the fact that you may well have to be upgrading your items in a more horizontal way. So, say we have a different healing item of yours that costs us 3 gold early on. Maybe even if we got a second one of it and it became shiny, if we're not upgrading it any further, late game, forage mushrooms might actually be so much better of an option that we sell the option we had before and replace it with forage mushrooms. It might even do exactly the same thing. Obviously, forage mushrooms has a bit of a different passive to some other items. Maybe the item we had was just flat healing, and we replace it with this, you know? But there are these ways that iterate your builds that I can see them starting to add in, and it makes me pretty excited about the game. Anyway, that's forage mushrooms. It is a healing item. It's going to fit in a lot of healing builds, but it also can trigger off of lots of fast-firing medium items to apply lots of joy. So another slightly flexible item, but definitely has 2 different positions it can be in to cause to be at its maximum effectiveness. So we've seen how items can scale through gold, but if you're interested in how items might scale differently, then can I interest you with this Pygmalion item collection here, where we are scaling with stats. In this case, we are scaling with strength. So go ahead and check that out to learn a little bit more about scaling in the Bazaar.